thick-headed blacksmith like you probably can't even read a watch. Come over here and say that! No.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Assassin's Creed Unity should you play it on Steam Deck. By now I've done quite a few of these videos and I have done a few of them already on Assassin's Creed games, so I'm getting quite familiar with this series on Steam Deck by now. How does this game run? Is it any fun to play? Stick around if you want to find out. Now, even though I have played quite a lot of Assassin's Creed games at this point, I'd never actually played Assassin's Creed Unity up to now. I played plenty of the early Assassin's Creed games, so you know, like 1, 2, that kind of thing, and also plenty of the latest ones. We're talking about the RPGs, Origins Odyssey, that sort of thing. But there's kind of a middle area of the series where I kind of fell out of the franchise, and Unity was one of those games that I just never got round to playing. This entry into the Assassin's Creed games is set in France, Paris, and it follows the work of Arno Dorian as he joins and quickly makes a name for himself in the Assassin's Guild. So on to the technical portion of the video. Now, in all of the other Assassin's Creed games that I've featured on this channel, there is a launcher to get into the game, and with Unity it's no different. Ubisoft Connect is ever present, but we've had varying levels of success really with how easy it is to sort of get past and get back into the game. Odyssey had it the best. You barely felt like the launcher was there. It saved all your details and you went past it very quickly, but unfortunately that's not the case with Assassin's Creed Unity. Every time you launch the game from Steam, it requests you to re-enter your password for Ubisoft Connect, but it does not open any kind of keyboard, so you actually need to use the Steam function to manually open the Steam Deck keyboard and type in your password using the touchscreen to then proceed. It's not really the end of the world, I guess, but I did find it a little bit annoying, particularly when I'd forget and then I would be surprised by being greeted by that "please enter your password" screen over and over again. But thankfully that was sort of the only issue that I had with Connect. It never crashed or prevented me from getting into the game or anything like that. Now, once you're in game, I have to say that I think Assassin's Creed Unity is one of the best looking AC games that I have played on Steam Deck so far. The lighting just seems to look absolutely incredible. There's been plenty of times I've been climbing the tall buildings of Paris as the sun rises, and when I reach the top I find myself just pausing for a minute, looking out over the city in the warm glow of the sun. It just looks absolutely incredible. By default, the game launched for me with the high graphics settings preset, and these are the results. You can see them on screen. I absolutely love the look of the city rooftops, and some of the parkour animations are absolutely fantastic. And because you're playing on a smaller screen, it means you barely notice that the game actually came out about 10 years ago. So using these default settings, you do get a pretty decent frame rate, although it can definitely be a bit of a varied one. It's always above 30 in my experience, but other than that, it's hard to guarantee a frame rate, and it really depends what's happening in the world and on the screen around you. The city that you're running through can get quite busy at times, so you're often bouncing around from the 30s to the 50s. I'm showing frame rate uncapped in my recording, but I did find the constant variation to be not so nice to look at, and in the end I actually settled on using the Steam Deck to limit the refresh rate to 30, and once I did that I never found that it dipped below 30, and I think the game is very enjoyable to play this way. At these high graphic settings, I was also really impressed with the battery life that you got playing Unity. I am on an OLED, but the estimates for battery life were about 4 hours, and it did match up to that in my experience, which is so much playtime for a game like this. And then just talking about the fan, on these settings the fan doesn't really spin up very much. It is there in the background from time to time, but it never gets too aggressive or jarring. So that's default settings. If you want a higher frame rate, you can of course adjust the graphic settings down, but I never actually found it possible to get anything like a locked 60 frames when playing Assassin's Creed Unity. You can get much closer, so on the lowest settings you shift the range from 30 to 50 to more like 40 to 60. You can see this on the screen now. This is gameplay on the low settings. And there are times when you do reach 60, but there are other times, like when you're in a big crowd, that you do drop back down into the 40s. I do still think the game looks good on low settings, and you could almost choose to lock this down at the 45 frame rate range, and I don't think you would see it dip too often. I did notice weirdly that at these settings the fan seems to be on more often. Still nothing very loud, but it just felt to me like the amount of time that it was spinning was, you know, it was just on more than when you're playing at those higher settings and you limit the frame rate to 30. So it kind of seems to be a theme that no matter what graphic settings you're on, if you have a higher frame rate, you're more likely to get the fan to kick in. There was something I noticed about the graphics that felt a little bit strange. So when I'm doing these recordings, I normally keep the Steam Deck resolution at 720p like it would be in handheld, but then I plug it into the dock so that I can connect it up to my capture card to take footage for the gameplay. And normally when I'm playing and switching between handheld and docked, but always at 720p, I really feel a difference when that 720p is stretched over the monitor compared to playing handheld. But with this game, it didn't feel too bad on the bigger screen. I didn't notice it being as pixelated as normal. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned that every time you boot up this game, it asks you to re-enter your password for Ubisoft Connect, which is very annoying. And so this makes it even more of a good thing that the Steam Deck's suspend feature works really well here. When you resume, you're not kicked out back to a menu or anything like that, so it's very nice to not have to reboot this game every time you want to play it, and so you can sort of skip that annoying step. I have been having some trouble with the controls on startup every now and then, so I'll launch the game and the controls will work in the Steam's menus, but it won't work in the game itself. It doesn't happen every time. I'm struggling to sort of find a common theme. I have tried changing the controller order, I've tried putting the Steam Deck back to sleep, but sometimes the only way I've been able to fix it is actually to just fully restart the game. I can't say for sure that this is specific to Assassin's Creed Unity though, because before this I was trying Fable Anniversary and I had the same trouble there. So it could be just I'm having some troubles with my Steam Deck, or maybe you will also see these in Assassin's Creed Unity. By the way, don't expect a Fable Anniversary video anytime soon. Sadly, it kept crashing, so I gave up on that one. But yeah, I would be really interested to know if you've also been having control issues from time to time, whether it's just me or certain games, or maybe it's a new bug in the latest update. Let me know if you've been seeing these as well. So that really wraps up the technical side of this video. I think Assassin's Creed Unity looks gorgeous to play on Steam Deck, and I'm really impressed with how long the battery lasts. 4 hours is way more than I expected, so you can get a lot of playtime with this one. So, as always, we now ask the question, is Assassin's Creed Unity actually any fun to play? And my answer is yes, but this time there are a couple of caveats because there are a few things about Unity that I wasn't such a fan of. So first I'm going to start with the two areas that I'm not so sure about. The first one is I don't think this is a particularly great story or cast of characters. I'm going to talk a little bit about some spoilers here, nothing major, but skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled. You play as Arno Dorian. His father was murdered when he was a young boy, and so he's taken in by a well-off member of French society along with his daughter. Very early on in the game, he too is murdered, and that's how Arno finds himself as part of the Guild of Assassins. He's looking for revenge against anyone who's involved in those schemes. It's a pretty basic story, and I have found it hard to sort of really get behind the characters in it. The deaths happen so early on that of course you're not really attached at all. You know, especially if you think of Assassin's Creed 2 is actually quite a similar story. Ezio's whole family is murdered, but I don't know, I just felt like that one was a bit more emotional than what you've got here in Unity. I also think that Arno himself as a main character is a bit bland and a bit one note. I did think there was going to be an interesting dynamic with the love interest of the game because it's revealed very early on that she is a Templar, so I was quite excited for that, but she does then disappear for I think basically the full first half of the game. When I'm making this video I am still playing through the story, so maybe it does pick up and maybe the ending is great, but even if that's true then sort of, you know, at least the first half or 3/4 of the story has been a bit disappointing, and that might be enough to put a lot of people off. So it's just a bit of a warning that you may not be a huge fan of that if you're really into stories in your games. Okay, so that section on story over, spoilers over. The second part of the game that I'm not too keen on is the mission structure. The main story is separated into missions and that's fine, but then all of the other content in this game is sort of dotted around the map with icons all over the place denoting where there is something to do. The problem I have with this is that there really are a lot of mission icons all over the map, and a lot of them are actually just filler content that it's interesting at first when you do it the first few times, but it tires out quite quickly. You do get some cool side missions, so on one hand I enjoyed a bit of a larger quest chain. It involved finding a kidnapped informant, so you had to go and spy on a meeting in the street to hear where they were being held, then you had to infiltrate, rescue them and escape, and that was pretty fun. But on the other hand there are plenty of these sort of very basic simple mission types where literally all you're doing is maybe pickpocket one person, or you know, you have to go and assassinate somebody, but the person is literally just sort of like walking down the street, there's nothing to it, you essentially can just run up to them and press the assassinate button, so it's kind of gets a bit boring. All of the these are mostly shown on the map with the same icon, and so you do have to sift through them to find the ones that you think you'll like. There are also co-op missions in this game. Unity, when it came out, was very big on co-op. I've had a go on a few of these. Matchmaking does still seem to activate, but I never managed to find anybody. So after a few minutes, it gives you the option to try these alone. Now, they are much more interesting to do, but they're a lot harder because they're designed for multiplayer, so they're not really accessible until you've got a good amount of playtime under your belt. This is probably an area of the game that will bother some people more than others, but yeah, just overall, I wasn't such a huge fan of the mission structure. And also at one point, I accidentally launched the sort of DLC epilogue that comes included for everybody. I thought I was just fast traveling back to the base, but I clicked a fast travel icon which was next to my base, and that is how you get into the DLC. It doesn't really warn you that that's about to happen. You then can't get back right away, and you have to actually do the opening mission of this epilogue DLC before you're then allowed to fast travel back to, you know, the main section of the game. And the difficulty level on that opening mission is quite high, so do watch out for that, because it took me quite a long time to actually get through that first mission of the DLC before I could then get back to the main game. So that's enough of that really. We're going to go on to the good stuff now that I liked, and I was surprised by how much I actually enjoyed Paris as a setting in this game. The city is beautiful and serene from above, which contrasts the busy chaos that happens when you're running through the streets down below. Even though I wasn't always engaged with the mission that I was doing, I still loved traversing through this setting. Depending on which district of the city you're in, there's a mix of these sort of rundown homes versus much grander buildings. The parkour now allows you to enter a lot of these buildings through windows too, and it can feel really satisfying if you're ever running away from or chasing somebody, take a shortcut through a building instead of over it. This game is also the only one that I know of that includes a free running option to go down as well as up. Now, often this just translates to Arno sort of dropping down from ledge to ledge, but it's a lot more automatic and so a lot quicker, so it does feel a lot better. It sort of keeps the flow going of your running. We're also not quite in the era of free climbing any surface yet, so I've had a lot of fun scaling the buildings, picking out the right path to get to the top, and some of the climbing animations seem unique in this game and they look really good. I also enjoyed just the sheer amount of options that are for customization both within and outside of combat. There really is a lot for you to choose from. You can equip Arno with all sorts of weapons. So you've got your basic swords, maces, you've also got longer weapons like axes, then you've got things like rifles, pistols, there's these sort of throwing knives that you actually launch from this kind of mini crossbow on your wrist, there's different types of bombs, you can throw coins on the ground. Then within those main weapons, so things like the swords, there's lots of different upgrade options and different looks of the weapon, so you can really just pick your favorite, max it out to the most damage that you can, and have a great time with it. You can also change your armor. Now, I haven't really done this yet because, to be honest, I actually quite like Arno's default look, but there are options to equip stronger pieces of armor or just switch it out visually for something else. So for example, you can get outfits from the previous AC games for, you know, Ezio for example, or Altair. The only time that I did actually really start to have a look at upgrading my armor was when I did get stuck in that DLC mission. It was a lot harder, so I did then look at upgrading my armor. The game also has skill points that you can spend. These are maybe a little bit basic, but I still appreciated them. It's kind of like half a skill tree. I didn't realize that some of the customization we see in the RPG Assassin's Creed games actually started, you know, as early on as Unity, and so I always enjoy being able to tailor my character how I like. Now, earlier in the video I said I wasn't such a huge fan of the story and the missions, but there is one mission type that has sort of stood out in this game that's a lot more fun than all of the others. A lot of the overarching story missions are geared towards finding an assassination target, and once you've done that, you know, you've located them, the final mission in a sequence is then to take them out. And these missions are actually really quite open. You know that your target is moving around the area somewhere, but you've got a lot of freedom of how you want to take them out. They also often have side objectives that can be carried out first to help you in your main objective. So one example from the first of these big assassination missions, you can just run in sword swinging and pistol firing if you want to, or you can first go and look for another NPC instead, and they've got a key. So if you take them out or steal their key, you can then climb up the side of a building, get in through a locked door, and then you can see if you can take them down much more stealthily once you're already inside, rather than sort of having to already announce your presence by by just trying to force your way into the building through the main door. I really like this freedom. I am not always that great at stealthing it, and sometimes these do just break down into big fights for me, but being able to make a plan and then try to execute it your way, it's exciting and it really makes these missions stand out. So you might have noticed that in this video I've been a bit more mixed than I am normally. When I do these in-depth reviews about playing games on Steam Deck, normally I am quite positive, and that's just because in order to make these videos, I have to feel like that I've played a game for long enough and in depth enough that I know what I'm talking about. And for me to actually get to that point on a game on Steam Deck, I have to have quite enjoyed it and feel like it's a good game. I don't want to put you off too much though. I do think that even with the negatives that I mentioned in terms of story and mission structure, I actually have still been having a really good time with this game. It sort of feels like a balance between the old Assassin's Creed games and the newer ones where they become a lot more RPG-like, and it is just a lot of fun to mess around in this city, you know, climbing all the buildings or just fighting guards in the street. It kind of reminds me of the original Assassin's Creed, the very first one, and I think 2 as well. A lot of the time I remember I just spent fighting guards in the street, and you know, I enjoyed that, and I've kind of enjoyed that again here in Unity. There's a lot to like in this game. Maybe it would be worth waiting for a sale if you're on the fence, but I would still encourage you to give it a try if you're interested and if you're a fan of the other Assassin's Creed games. So hopefully I've given you enough information to answer whether or not you should play Assassin's Creed Unity on Steam Deck. I really hope you found this video useful, and please let me know down in the comments what you think of this game. Are you now going to pick it up? Have you been enjoying it already? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.